The sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Cripple Creek, Colorado, as Sadie Wells clutched the letter that had shattered her world just 3 months ago. The crisp April morning of 1882 felt colder than it should have, but grief had a way of chilling a person from the inside out. Her fingers traced over the wrinkled paper, the words now memorized but no less painful. Her brother Thomas, the last of her living family, had been killed in a mining accident back east. Every day since receiving the news, Sadie had made the half-mile walk from her small homestead to sit beside the town's wooden mailbox stand. She'd wait there for hours, her dark blue calico dress gathering dust, her honey-brown hair escaping its pins as the day wore on. Some folks in town had taken to calling her the Mailbox Widow, though she'd never been married. At 24, Sadie had come to Cripple Creek 2 years earlier with Thomas, full of dreams for the silver mines that dotted the mountains. When he'd returned east to settle their parents' affairs after their passing last fall, she never imagined he wouldn't come back. "You expecting something important, Miss Wells?" Mrs. Peterson had asked the previous day, her tone a mixture of pity and curiosity as she collected her own mail. Thomas might have sent something before. Sadie couldn't finish the sentence. Or perhaps there's news about his belongings. The older woman had just patted her hand sympathetically before hurrying back to her general store. Now, as the morning stretched toward noon, Sadie remained perched on the small bench beside the mailbox, her gaze fixed on the winding trail that led into town. The stagecoach had already come and gone, bringing no letters for Sadie Wells. Still, she couldn't bring herself to leave. Where else would she go? The small cabin felt emptier with each passing day. The sound of approaching hoofbeats pulled her from her thoughts. A rider appeared through the heat haze, tall in the saddle of a magnificent chestnut quarter horse. As he drew closer, Sadie could make out his features beneath a worn Stetson's strong jaw shadowed with stubble, eyes that seemed to hold the very color of the mountains. The stranger reined his horse to a stop near the mailbox. His clothes bore the dust of the trail, but there was something refined about him despite the rugged appearance a man who knew both hardship and education. "Madam," he greeted, tipping his hat respectfully as he dismounted. "Forgive me, but I couldn't help noticing you sitting here when I passed through town yesterday." His voice carried a slight Eastern accent, softened by what must have been years in the West. Sadie straightened her posture, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "I'm waiting for the mail, sir." He nodded, his eyes kind but knowing. "The stagecoach only comes on Mondays and Thursdays. Today's Tuesday." "I'm aware," she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. The stranger tied his horse to the hitching post and stepped closer, removing his hat. His hair was the color of rich tobacco, with strands of gold where the sun had lightened it. "Quinn Mackenzie," he introduced himself. "I've just taken over as foreman at the Silver Bell mine." "Sadie Wells," she responded automatically, though she made no move to stand. Quinn glanced at the letter she still clutched in her hand, then back to her face. There was no judgment in his expression, only a gentle understanding that made her chest ache. "Letters will come, Miss Wells," he said softly. "Whatever you're waiting for, it'll come in time." Something about his words, or perhaps the genuine kindness behind them, made tears spring to Sadie's eyes. She quickly blinked them away, unwilling to break down in front of a stranger. "My brother's dead," she found herself saying. "I'm not sure what I'm waiting for anymore." Quinn Mackenzie didn't offer empty platitudes or uncomfortable condolences. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "Sometimes we wait because it's all we know how to do." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, offering it to her. "It's getting mighty warm to be sitting out here without water." Sadie hesitated before accepting it. The water was cool and she hadn't realized how thirsty she'd become. "Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie." "Quinn, please," he corrected with a small smile. "May I walk you home, Miss Wells? Or perhaps to wherever you might be headed next." Sadie glanced down the road toward her cabin, suddenly feeling the weight of returning to its emptiness. "I should be getting back. I have chickens to tend to." Quinn nodded, retrieving his canteen and replacing his hat. "I'll be headed to the mine office most days, which I believe takes me past your place, the small homestead with the blue door about half a mile south." "Yes, that's mine. Perhaps I could check your mailbox for you on the days the stage comes through," he offered. "Save you the trip to town." The kindness of his offer touched something in Sadie that had been frozen since receiving the news of Thomas's death. "That's very generous, but I wouldn't want to impose." "No imposition at all," Quinn assured her. "I'll be passing by regardless." As they walked the dusty road toward her cabin, Sadie found herself stealing glances at the tall cowboy beside her. There was something comforting about his presence, not intrusive, but solid and reassuring. "How long have you been in Cripple Creek?" she asked, breaking the companionable silence. "Just arrived last week," Quinn replied. "The mine owner, Mr. Hollister, hired me away from a silver operation in Leadville. I've been working mines across Colorado for 5 years now. And before that," a shadow passed across his face, "Boston. My father was in banking." "He had different plans for my future." Sadie nodded, understanding family expectations all too well. "Thomas and I came from Pennsylvania. Our parents ran a small mercantile until they both took ill last year." As they approached her cabin, Sadie felt a strange reluctance to end their conversation. Quinn seemed to sense it, slowing his steps as they reached her gate. "Miss Wells," he began, "I hope you don't find this forward, but would you allow me to call on you properly sometime? Perhaps this Sunday after church services." The request surprised her. Sadie hadn't considered the possibility of social calls or courtship, not since Thomas died, and honestly, not much before that either. She'd been too focused on building their new life in Cripple Creek. "I haven't been to church lately," she admitted. Quinn nodded, no judgment in his expression. "Then perhaps I could stop by Sunday afternoon. I could bring some of Mrs. Thompson's apple pie from the hotel restaurant. I'm told it's the best in the county." Despite herself, Sadie felt the corner of her mouth lift slightly. "I suppose that would be all right." "Excellent." Quinn smiled, and Sadie noticed the small crinkles around his eyes that spoke of a man who smiled often. "Until Sunday, then." As she watched him mount his horse and ride toward town, Sadie felt something shift inside her, not an end to her grief, but perhaps the first tentative step toward finding space beside it for something else. The next morning, Sadie awoke before dawn, as had become her habit. But instead of immediately preparing for her vigil at the mailbox, she found herself attending to long, neglected tasks around the cabin. She swept the floor, washed the windows, and even took a moment to arrange wildflowers in a jar on the table. By Thursday, when the stagecoach was due, Sadie was torn between her routine of waiting at the mailbox and the voice inside that whispered it was time to stop. She had just decided to walk to town when she heard a horse approaching. Quinn Mackenzie rode up to her gate, dust from the trail coating his clothes. "Good morning, Miss Wells," he called, dismounting gracefully. "Mr. Mackenzie," she greeted him, suddenly conscious of her simple dress and hair loosely braided over one shoulder. "I thought I'd check if you needed anything from town," he said. "The stage should arrive within the hour." "I was just heading there myself," Sadie admitted. Quinn studied her for a moment. "Would you allow me to save you the walk? I'm headed that way regardless." Sadie hesitated, but the genuine offer in his eyes convinced her. "If you're certain it's no trouble." "None at all." His smile was warm. "Is there anything specific you're hoping for?" She thought about lying, about making up some ordinary errand, but something about Quinn made her want to be honest. "I still check for letters. From people who might not know about Thomas yet, or perhaps from the mining company back east with information about his affairs." Quinn nodded, understanding in his gaze. "I'll be thorough in my inquiries," he promised. When he returned 2 hours later, Sadie was tending to her small vegetable garden. She stood as he approached, wiping her hands on her apron, trying not to appear too eager. Quinn's expression told her before he spoke. "No letters today," he said gently, "but I took the liberty of bringing you these." He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside, Sadie found a packet of wildflower seeds, a newspaper from Denver, and a small tin of peppermint candies. "I thought the flowers might brighten your garden," Quinn explained, "and the newspaper might connect you to the world beyond Cripple Creek. The candies—" He smiled slightly. "Well, everyone needs something sweet now and then." Sadie was touched by the thoughtfulness of the simple gifts. "Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. This was very kind." "Quinn," he reminded her gently. "Quinn," she corrected, the name feeling strangely intimate on her tongue. "Thank you," he tipped his hat. "Until Sunday, Miss Wells." As promised, Quinn arrived Sunday afternoon, Mrs. Thompson's apple pie carefully balanced in one hand as he knocked on Sadie's door. He traded his work clothes for a clean shirt and vest, his hair still damp from washing. Sadie had spent the morning in an unfamiliar state of anticipation. She'd worn her best dress, a deep green that brought out the flecks of amber in her eyes, and had pinned her hair up with more care than she had in months. They sat on her small porch, the early May sunshine warming the boards beneath their feet as they shared the pie and conversation. Quinn told her about his years in Boston, about his father's disappointment when he chose the West over Harvard, about the freedom he'd found in the mountains. "There's something honest about mining," he explained. "The earth either yields or it doesn't. No pretense, no social maneuvering." "Thomas felt the same way," Sadie said, surprised to find she could speak her brother's name without her voice breaking. "He loved the idea of finding treasure beneath the ground." "And you?" Quinn asked. "What brought you west besides following your brother?" Sadie considered the question. "I suppose I wanted a different story than the one laid out for me in Pennsylvania. Marry the son of another merchant, mind the store, raise children who would do the same." She looked out across the small valley below her cabin. "Here I can see for miles. I can breathe." Quinn nodded. "That's it exactly." As the sun began to set, Quinn reluctantly stood to leave. "I've enjoyed this afternoon tremendously, Miss Wells." "Sadie," she offered. "If I'm to call you Quinn, you should call me Sadie." His smile brightened. "Sadie," he repeated as if testing the sound. "Would you permit me to call on you again?" "I would like that," she admitted. In the weeks that followed, Quinn became a regular visitor at Sadie's cabin. He would stop by on his way to or from the mine, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book from the town's small lending library, fresh bread from the hotel kitchen, or simply news from town. Every Monday and Thursday he checked the mail for her, never showing disappointment when he returned empty-handed. Gradually, Sadie found herself looking forward to his visits more than any potential letters. By late May, the wildflowers Quinn had given her were blooming along the garden path, splashes of color against the cabin's weathered wood. Sadie had begun to venture into town more frequently, no longer spending hours beside the mailbox, but instead stopping briefly to chat with Mrs. Peterson at the general store or taking a shift helping at the school when the teacher, Miss Hartford, fell ill. One warm evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink, Quinn reached for her hand. His touch was gentle, questioning. "Sadie," he said softly. "I've grown very fond of you these past weeks." She looked at their joined hands, his tanned and calloused from work, hers smaller but equally marked by labor. "I've grown fond of you too, Quinn." "There's a social at the church this Saturday," he said. "Would you accompany me?" "As my—" "Well, as someone I'm courting, if you'd allow it." The word courting hung between them, weighted with possibility. Sadie felt a flutter of something long dormant in her chest, hope, perhaps, or joy. "I would be honored," she replied, squeezing his hand. The church social was Sadie's first real outing since Thomas's death. She wore her green dress again, with a ribbon Mrs. Peterson had insisted she take as a gift. As she and Quinn walked into the churchyard together, she felt the eyes of the townspeople on them, heard the whispers that followed. "That's the Wells girl, you know, the one who lost her brother. Mackenzie's been calling on her for weeks now. Good for her, finding someone after such tragedy." Quinn must have felt her tense because he placed a reassuring hand at the small of her back. "People talk," he murmured. "It's what they do when they've nothing better to occupy their minds." The evening passed in a blur of fiddle music, laughter, and simple food shared on blankets beneath lantern light. Quinn introduced her to miners from the Silver Bell, their wives and children who played tag between the adults. For the first time in months, Sadie felt part of something larger than her grief. As they danced a Virginia reel, Quinn's eyes never left her face. "You're beautiful when you smile," he told her as they came together in the pattern of the dance. "I wish you'd do it more often." "I'm finding more reasons to," she admitted. Later, as Quinn walked her home beneath a canopy of stars, he stopped at her gate. "May I kiss you good night, Sadie Wells?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Yes," she whispered. His lips were soft against hers, the kiss gentle and brief, but it left her breathless. Quinn rested his forehead against hers for a moment before stepping back. "Good night, Sadie," he said, his voice husky. "Good night, Quinn." Inside her cabin, Sadie touched her fingers to her lips, marveling at how life could change in such unexpected ways. The following Monday, Quinn rode up to her cabin with tension evident in his shoulders. Sadie met him at the gate, immediately concerned. "What's happened?" she asked. He handed her an envelope. "This came on today's stage." Sadie stared at the official letterhead of the Eastern Mining Corporation, Thomas's former employer. Her name was printed in careful script on the front. "I haven't opened it," Quinn said unnecessarily. "Would you like me to leave you alone?" Sadie shook her head. "Stay, please." With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and unfolded the letter. As she read, tears filled her eyes, but they weren't entirely tears of grief. "They're sending Thomas's remaining wages and personal effects," she explained, voice thick with emotion. "They apologize for the delay. There was confusion because he'd listed our parents as his beneficiaries, and it took time to verify that I was his next of kin." Quinn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That's good news, isn't it?" "Yes," Sadie nodded, "but it's also final. The last piece of business concerning my brother." "Not the last piece of him," Quinn said softly. "You carry those with you, your memories, your love for him." Sadie leaned into his strength, allowing herself to be held as tears streamed down her face. Quinn simply stood with her, solid and patient, until the storm passed. "Thank you," she whispered eventually. "For what? For being here. For understanding. For—" she struggled to articulate what she meant. "For showing me that life continues." Quinn kissed her forehead. "Life not only continues, Sadie. It renews." As June blossomed into July, Sadie's cabin slowly transformed. She hung new curtains in the windows, planted more vegetables in her garden, and even added a rocking chair to her porch, a gift from Quinn, who had noticed her admiring one in the general store. Their courtship progressed with a comfortable rhythm. Quinn would join her for supper 3 or 4 evenings a week, often bringing news from the mine or stories from his travels. Sadie found herself laughing more, the weight of grief not gone but shifted to make room for happiness. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching a thunderstorm roll across the valley, Quinn spoke of his future. "Mr. Hollister has offered me a partnership in the Silver Bell," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "If production continues as it has been, I could buy in with a 15% share by next spring." "Quinn, that's wonderful news," Sadie exclaimed, turning to him with genuine delight. "It would mean staying in Cripple Creek," he continued, his eyes searching her face. "Putting down roots." Sadie understood what he wasn't saying. "And is that what you want, to stay?" Quinn took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I've never wanted to settle anywhere before. I've always been looking for the next opportunity, the next adventure." His gaze held hers steadily. "But now I find myself wanting to build something lasting," Sadie's heart quickened. "What sort of something?" "A home," Quinn said simply. "A life, with you if you'd consider it." Though they'd been courting for weeks now, this was the first time either had spoken of a future together in such explicit terms. Sadie found herself both thrilled and frightened by the possibility. "I care for you deeply, Quinn," she said carefully. "But I'm still finding my footing after losing Thomas. I don't want to make promises until I'm certain I can keep them fully." Instead of disappointment, Quinn's face showed understanding. "I'm not asking for promises tonight, Sadie. Just that you'll think about the possibility of us building a future together." Relief washed through her. "I already am," she admitted with a small smile. The summer heat intensified as July gave way to August. The mines operated at reduced hours during the hottest part of the day, giving Quinn more time to call on Sadie. Together, they began making improvements to her cabin, reinforcing the roof before winter, building a proper hen house for her chickens, digging a deeper well for more reliable water. Each project brought them closer, teaching them how they worked together, how they resolved disagreements, how they supported each other's strengths and compensated for weaknesses. Without formally deciding anything, they were building a partnership. "You're good with numbers," Quinn observed one evening as Sadie calculated the lumber needed for a storage shed. "Better than most men I know." "Thomas taught me," Sadie explained. "He said a woman alone needs to know how to manage her affairs without being cheated." Quinn's expression grew thoughtful. "Have you ever considered putting that skill to professional use?" Sadie looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "The mine office is in desperate need of someone who can keep the books properly," Quinn explained. "Currently we've got young Billy Watson doing it, and while he's eager, he's more likely to be a miner than an accountant." "You're offering me a job, if you'd be interested," Quinn nodded. 3 days a week, perhaps. The pay would be fair, the same as we'd offer any man with similar skills." Sadie considered the proposition. The extra money would certainly be welcome, but more than that, she found herself drawn to the idea of work beyond her small homestead. Would it cause difficulties? A woman working at the mine office, Quinn shrugged. Possibly some talk at first. But Mr. Hollister cares more about competence than convention, and the office is separate from the mine itself, so there's no impropriety. Then yes, Sadie decided. I would like to try. The following Monday, Quinn escorted Sadie to the small wooden structure that served as the Silver Bell mine's office. Mr. Hollister, a stout man with an impressive mustache and shrewd eyes, greeted them warmly. "Miss Wells, Mackenzie speaks very highly of your abilities," he said, showing her to a desk near the window. "We're a growing operation, and our record-keeping needs to match our ambitions." The ledgers were in disarray, with entries missing or incomplete. Sadie dove into the work, finding satisfaction in bringing order to chaos. By the end of her first day, She had reconciled the previous month's accounts and identified several discrepancies that needed investigation. "You're a natural," Quinn told her as they walked home that evening. "Hollister's already singing your praises." Sadie felt a warm glow of pride. "It feels good to use my mind this way, to contribute something beyond my own walls." "You've always contributed," Quinn corrected her, "but I'm glad this brings you satisfaction." As August faded into September, Sadie settled into her new routine. 3 days at the mine office, the rest tending to her homestead and helping with community needs. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society, contributing to their efforts to establish Cripple Creek's first proper hospital. Her circle of acquaintances widened to include the wives of miners, merchants' daughters, and even the somewhat intimidating Mrs. Hollister, who took a liking to Sadie's straightforward nature. One crisp September evening, Quinn arrived at Sadie's cabin with unusual formality, wearing his Sunday suit and carrying a small parcel. "I thought we might walk up to Sentinel Point," he suggested. "The aspens are beginning to turn, and the view at sunset is spectacular." Sensing something significant in his manner, Sadie agreed. They climbed the gentle slope behind her cabin, following a narrow trail through stands of pine and aspen. The latter were indeed turning, their leaves shimmering gold in the late afternoon light. At the summit, a flat rocky outcropping provided a panoramic view of Cripple Creek and the surrounding mountains. Quinn spread a blanket he'd brought, and they sat side by side, watching as the sun began its descent behind the western peaks. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said in July," Quinn began, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his shoulders. "About finding your footing after loss." Sadie nodded, her heart beginning to race. "I've watched you these past months," he continued. "Seen you not just survive your grief, but find ways to honor Thomas's memory through living fully. You're the strongest person I know, Sadie Wells." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I love you. I think I began falling in love with you that first day by the mailbox, seeing your determination even in the midst of heartbreak." Tears pricked at Sadie's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "I love you too, Quinn. I think I was afraid to admit it, as if loving someone new might somehow diminish what I felt for those I've lost." "Love doesn't work that way," Quinn said softly. "It expands to encompass more, never replacing what came before." He reached for the parcel he'd brought, unwrapping it to reveal a small wooden box beautifully carved with wildflowers. "I had this made by Mr. Chen, the carpenter." Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a ring, a simple gold band set with a small but perfect sapphire. "Sadie Wells," Quinn said, his voice husky with emotion, "would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Sadie looked from the ring to Quinn's face, seeing in his eyes all the promise of their future together. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Quinn Mackenzie." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a kiss that spoke of devotion, passion, and the deep understanding they'd built between them. When they finally parted, the sun had set, painting the sky in brilliant pinks and purples. "Look," Quinn said, pointing to the valley below. Lights were beginning to twinkle in the windows of Cripple Creek, small beacons of home and hearth in the gathering dusk. "Our town," Sadie murmured, leaning against Quinn's solid warmth. "Our future," he added. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Cripple Creek. Mrs. Peterson insisted on hosting a small celebration at the general store, where townsfolk gathered to offer congratulations and advice, some welcome and some decidedly not. "You'll want to start a family right away," Mrs. Thompson told Sadie with a meaningful look. "A man needs children to feel settled." Before Sadie could respond, Quinn appeared at her side. "I think we'll make those decisions together," he said pleasantly but firmly. "Though I can assure you, Mrs. Thompson, I already feel quite settled with Sadie alone." Later, as they walked home under a canopy of stars, Sadie squeezed Quinn's hand gratefully. "Thank you for that. Everyone seems to have opinions about what our marriage should be." "Let them talk," Quinn said easily. "We'll build the life that suits us." They set the wedding date for the first Saturday in October, a compromise between Quinn's wish for an immediate ceremony and Sadie's desire for time to prepare. The Ladies' Aid Society threw themselves into the arrangements, determined that the first wedding in Cripple Creek in nearly a year would be a memorable affair. The week before the wedding, as Sadie was putting final touches on her dress, her mother's wedding gown, carefully altered, a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Mr. Hollister standing on her porch, hat in hand. "Miss Wells," he greeted her. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Sadie invited him in, curious about this unexpected visit. Mr. Hollister declined to sit, seeming slightly uncomfortable. "I've come on a matter of business, actually. As you know, Quinn will be taking on a partnership role at the Silver Bell." "Yes, he's very excited about the opportunity." "As he should be," Hollister nodded. "The man has a natural talent for mining operations, but with his increased responsibilities, we'll be needing someone to take over the day-to-day management of the office. Someone who understands our books and has proven themselves capable and trustworthy." Sadie's eyebrows rose as she realized where this was heading. "I'd like to offer you the position of office manager," Hollister continued, "full-time with a salary to match. You'd have authority over all record-keeping and correspondence, reporting directly to me and, of course, to Quinn in his capacity as partner." "Mr. Hollister, I'm flattered," Sadie managed, "but I'm about to be married." Many would consider it improper for a married woman to maintain such employment. Hollister waved a dismissive hand. "Mrs. Hollister runs our household accounts with more precision than any bank in Denver. A woman's intelligence doesn't diminish upon saying her vows, at least not in my experience." His expression grew serious. "The mine needs your skills, Miss Wells, or soon to be Mrs. Mackenzie, and if I may say so, I suspect you need the work as much as we need you." Sadie considered his words. "I would need to discuss this with Quinn." "Naturally," Hollister agreed. "Though I've already mentioned the possibility to him, and he seemed quite supportive. Said something about you being twice the accountant he could ever hope to be." After Hollister left, Sadie sat at her table, turning the offer over in her mind. When Quinn arrived for supper, she told him of Hollister's visit. "What do you think?" she asked, watching his face carefully for any sign of discomfort. Quinn's expression was thoughtful. "I think," he said slowly, "that I'm marrying a remarkably talented woman whose abilities deserve recognition." He reached across the table for her hand. "And I think I'd be a fool to stand in the way of that recognition out of some misplaced sense of pride or propriety." Relief flooded through Sadie. "So you wouldn't mind having your wife working alongside you?" "Mind," Quinn laughed. "Sadie, I'd be proud. Though I should warn you, Hollister's a demanding employer. He'll expect results, regardless of our personal connection." "I can handle Mr. Hollister," Sadie said confidently. "The question is, can you handle having a wife who's also your colleague?" Quinn's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I suppose we'll find out together." On their wedding day, October 7, 1882, Cripple Creek awoke to the first dusting of snow across the surrounding peaks. By mid-morning, the sun had burned through the clouds, leaving the air crisp and clear. Good fortune, according to Mrs. Peterson, who seemed to have appointed herself the authority on wedding omens. The small church was decorated with autumn flowers and evergreen boughs. Nearly the entire town had turned out for the occasion, filling the pews and spilling onto the lawn outside. Quinn stood at the altar in a new suit. His normally confident expression softened with visible emotion as he waited. When Sadie appeared at the church door on Mr. Hollister's arm, the older man having offered to give her away in Thomas's absence, a hush fell over the congregation. Her mother's ivory gown had been restyled with lace from Mrs. Peterson's collection, and her hair was adorned with a crown of late-blooming wildflowers. But it was her expression radiant with joy and certainty that caught Quinn's breath. Their vows were simple and heartfelt. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her with such tender devotion that several women in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. The celebration afterward filled the town square, tables laden with food contributed by every household, fiddle music from the miners' band, dancing that continued well past sunset. As dusk fell, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the festivities. "Mrs. Mackenzie," Quinn murmured as they swayed together to a slow melody. "How does it feel?" Sadie looked up at her husband, marveling at the path that had brought them together. "Like coming home," she answered truthfully. "Like finding something I didn't know I was missing." Later that night, in the privacy of the cabin that was now their shared home, Sadie and Quinn discovered each other with the same blend of passion and tenderness that had characterized their courtship. Their lovemaking was both an affirmation of the vows they'd exchanged and a promise of the life they would build together. As they lay entwined in the quiet darkness, Sadie traced the line of Quinn's jaw with gentle fingers. "Do you remember what you said to me the first day we met, by the mailbox?" Quinn smiled, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "Letters will come," he recalled. "You were right," Sadie said softly. "Not just about the letter from the mining company, but about life continuing, about new beginnings being possible even after loss." "I spoke from experience," Quinn admitted, his expression growing serious. "I lost someone too before coming west. My fiancée in Boston, she died of scarlet fever just months before our wedding." Sadie's eyes widened. In all their conversations, he'd never mentioned this. "Quinn, I'm so sorry." "It was 7 years ago now," he said. "For a long time afterward, I couldn't imagine loving anyone again. I threw myself into work, into traveling, into anything that would keep me from staying still long enough to feel the emptiness." "What changed?" Sadie asked, resting her head on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Time, distance," Quinn said thoughtfully. "And then meeting you, a woman who understood loss but refused to be defined by it. You reminded me that grief isn't the end of the story." Sadie pressed closer to him, overwhelmed by the parallels in their experiences. "We found each other when we needed to," she murmured. "We did," Quinn agreed, kissing the top of her head. "And now we have a lifetime to write the rest of our story together." The first year of their marriage unfolded with both joys and challenges. They settled into a rhythm of work and home life, with both taking on responsibilities at the Silver Bell mine while maintaining their cabin. Quinn's partnership proved profitable as new veins of silver were discovered, and Sadie's management of the office brought unprecedented order and efficiency to the operation. In the spring of 1883, they purchased land closer to town and began construction on a proper house larger than the cabin, with room for the family they hoped to have. Quinn designed it himself, incorporating a spacious front porch where they could watch the sunset and a study where Sadie could work on the mine accounts when needed. "It seems extravagant," Sadie commented as they reviewed the plans one evening. "So much space for just the two of us." Quinn's expression was thoughtful. "For now," he said, "but I hope not always." Sadie understood his meaning. They had spoken of children, agreeing to let nature take its course. Though she sometimes worried, she was 25 now, Older than many women when they began their families, Quinn never expressed impatience. "We'll have the family we're meant to have," he often told her. "Whether that's 2 or 10 or just us." As summer turned to fall again, however, Sadie began to suspect that their family might be growing sooner than expected. When her suspicions were confirmed by Dr. Reynolds in early October, just before their first wedding anniversary, she planned a special way to share the news. That evening, as Quinn returned from the mine, Sadie met him at the door with a letter in her hand. "This came today," she said, fighting to keep her expression neutral. Quinn took it, curious. The envelope was addressed simply to Mr. and Mrs. Mackenzie in Sadie's own handwriting. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just a few lines. "Dear Mama and Papa, I look forward to meeting you next spring. I hope you will be as happy about my arrival as I am to join your family. Your little one." Quinn looked up, joy illuminating his features. "Sadie, are we?" "Yes," she confirmed, her own smile breaking through. "Dr. Reynolds says the baby should arrive in May." Quinn swept her into his arms, careful despite his enthusiasm. "A baby," he breathed. "Our baby." "Our family," Sadie corrected, happy tears spilling onto her cheeks. "The one we're meant to have." Their son, Thomas Quinn Mackenzie, was born on a perfect May morning in 1884, healthy and strong with a shock of dark hair and his father's determined chin. Quinn paced the porch during Sadie's labor, alternately praying and making bargains with God, until Mrs. Peterson emerged to announce he had a son. When he entered their bedroom to find Sadie cradling their newborn, Quinn fell to his knees beside the bed, overcome with emotion. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "You're perfect. I've never known such happiness." Sadie watched her husband and son, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such love. "This is what you promised me," she said softly, "that day by the mailbox. Letters will come, you said." She looked down at their child. "I never imagined the letter would be him." Quinn leaned in to kiss her, pouring all his love and gratitude into the gesture. "The best kind of letter," he agreed, "the beginning of a whole new chapter." Little Thomas thrived, growing into a curious, adventurous toddler who was the darling of Cripple Creek. Quinn proved to be a devoted father, often carrying the boy on his shoulders through town or showing him the workings of the mine office. Sadie continued her work, bringing Thomas with her when necessary, setting up a small play area in the corner of her office. By the time Thomas was 3, the Silver Bell mine had become one of the most productive in Colorado, and Quinn had increased his ownership to a full quarter share. Their home, completed just before Thomas's birth, became a gathering place for friends and colleagues, known for its warmth and hospitality. In the summer of 1887, as Sadie and Quinn celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary, they received news that the railroad would finally be extending a spur line to Cripple Creek, connecting the growing town more directly to Denver and beyond. "This will change everything," Quinn remarked as they discussed the development over dinner. "Easier shipment of ore, more supplies, more people. Progress," Sadie nodded. "Though I hope it doesn't change Cripple Creek too much. I've grown rather attached to our little town." Quinn smiled at her across the table. "Do you ever regret it? Staying here instead of moving on after Thomas died?" Sadie considered the question, looking around at the home they'd built, thinking of their son sleeping upstairs, the work they both found fulfilling, the community that had embraced them. "Never," she said with certainty. "This is where I was meant to be, where we were meant to be." Later that night, as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge, Thomas asleep in his bed, Sadie rested her head on Quinn's shoulder. "I have news," she said quietly. "Dr. Reynolds confirmed it yesterday." Quinn turned to look at her, understanding immediately. Another baby. Sadie nodded, placing her hand over her still flat stomach. January, he thinks. Quinn's face lit with joy as he pulled her close. Thomas will be a wonderful big brother. He will, Sadie agreed. Though we should probably start calling him Tommy to avoid confusion if this one's a boy. And if it's a girl, Quinn asked. Sadie had already given this some thought. I'd like to name her Elizabeth after my mother. Elizabeth Mackenzie, Quinn tested the name. It's beautiful. Their daughter, Elizabeth Sadie Mackenzie, arrived during a January blizzard in 1888. Tommy, not quite 4, was fascinated by his tiny sister, solemnly promising to protect her forever and always. As their family grew, so did Cripple Creek. The railroad's arrival brought new businesses, more miners, and increased prosperity. Quinn's position as a mine owner made him an influential voice in town affairs, while Sadie's sharp mind and fair dealing earned her respect beyond her role as Quinn's wife. In 1890, when Mr. Hollister decided to retire to Denver, he offered Quinn and 2 other partners the opportunity to buy him out completely. The decision would require significant investment, but would make Quinn a principal owner of one of the most successful mines in Colorado. It's a risk, he admitted to Sadie as they discussed the proposition late into the night. We'd need to mortgage the house, use most of our savings. But you believe in the mine, Sadie said, not a question but a statement. I do, Quinn nodded. The new assays show at least another decade of productive operation, possibly more with the right equipment. And having control means we can manage it our way: fair wages, proper safety measures. Sadie considered their options. At 32, she was now the mother of 2 children, secure in her marriage and position. The cautious path would be to maintain what they had, which was already more than she'd ever dreamed possible after Thomas's death. But that wasn't who they were, not who she and Quinn had become together. Let's do it, she decided. If you believe in the mine, then so do I. Quinn studied her face. You're certain? It would mean changes, tighter budgets for a while. We've weathered tighter times, Sadie reminded him, and we'd be building something for Tommy and Elizabeth's future. The next morning, they went together to the bank to arrange the financing. The agreement was signed the following week, making Quinn Mackenzie the majority shareholder of the Silverbell mine, with Sadie officially recognized as business manager of the operation. Their gamble paid off beyond their expectations. Under Quinn's direction, and with Sadie's careful financial management, the Silverbell's production increased by nearly 40% in the first year of their full ownership. They were able to repay the mortgage in half the time anticipated, and began investing in other ventures around Cripple Creek, including the town's first proper hotel and a stake in the expanding railroad. By 1892, the Mackenzies had become one of Cripple Creek's most prominent families. Their home, expanded to accommodate their growing prosperity, stood as a testament to what could be achieved through partnership, determination, and faith in each other. On a warm September evening, as they sat on their porch, now a wide, wraparound affair that offered views in all directions, Tommy and Elizabeth played in the yard below, their laughter carrying on the gentle breeze. I received a letter today, Sadie mentioned, reaching for Quinn's hand. From Mrs. Peterson's niece in Denver. She's considering opening a women's clothing shop here and wanted my opinion on suitable locations. Quinn smiled. Another sign of how Cripple Creek is growing. What did you tell her? That the town could certainly support such a business, especially with the new families arriving for the gold strike south of here. Sadie paused, watching their children. I also told her that if she needed an investor, we might be interested. Quinn's eyebrow raised. Expanding our portfolio into ladies' fashion now, Diversification, Sadie corrected with a smile. And I'd like to support more women in business. They face enough challenges without financial concerns as well. Quinn leaned over to kiss her temple. My wise wife, always thinking ahead. They sat in companionable silence for a while, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together at the end of a productive day. 10 years ago, Sadie said eventually, if someone had told me this would be my life, I wouldn't have believed them. After Thomas died, I couldn't imagine feeling happiness again, let alone all this. She gestured to encompass their home, their children, the life they'd built. When I first saw you sitting by that mailbox, Quinn said, his voice gentle with remembrance, I recognized something in you, a strength you perhaps didn't even know you possessed. You weren't just grieving, you were waiting, believing that something would come to fill the emptiness. And then you rode up, Sadie smiled, with your promise that letters would come. Quinn squeezed her hand. They did come, didn't they, in ways neither of us could have predicted. Sadie looked at their entwined fingers, at the sapphire ring she'd worn for a decade now, at the evidence of their shared life all around them. The very best kind of letters, she agreed softly, the ones written in love. As twilight deepened into evening, Quinn and Sadie called their children in for supper. Together, they moved inside to the warm light of their home, closing the door on the gathering darkness, a family forged from loss but defined by love. Their story still unfolding in the heart of Cripple Creek, Colorado.